Hey, I'm Mark Holcomb from Periphery, and you're listening in time.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of In Time UK. Our guest today has become a bit of a modern icon amongst guitarists, pioneering the gent scene with the rest of his band and cultivating the scene over the last 15 years or so, showing no signs of stopping. Guys, welcome Mark Holcomb from Periphery. How are you doing today, pal?
Great, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate you surrendering your time on a Monday to interview me. This is something I look forward to, so I appreciate it.
Oh, we appreciate that too, man. I mean, it's really an honour to have you on here. We're both big fans of the music, and me in particular have been a fan of the band for years, and all the other stuff in Haunted Shores and the merchandise and the guitars, everything. So
Oh,
it's really good to talk to you. Let's get started though, because I don't want to start. you know.
That's all
Um,
right, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
so tell us your origin story. How did it all start for you, and like what were you into right at the beginning?
Well, right at the beginning, first of all, I guess if we want to start right at the origin, I was an accident between my parents. No, I'm just kidding. Um, um, yeah, I mean, my intro to guitar happened in the mid 90s. Um, and up to that point, I had sort of been raised on like 80s music. Like, I don't know if you guys are into like Prince and like Phil Collins and Michael Jackson and Peter Gabriel and Genesis and things like that. That was my bread and butter. And then I grew into an awkward preteen, teenager. And then I picked up guitar on a whim, just had no expectation of ever really taking it seriously. It was just something for me to do, really. I had quite an awkward childhood, there's some bullying, there's some like sort of social awkwardness, like at school, and I didn't make a ton of friends. And so like at that point, I was looking for something, anything to make me feel connected to someone, you know what I mean? Like to something to be included in, as opposed to being the weird kid who would just play Sega Genesis at home with his brother. I wanted to feel part of something social. So, I mean, that was really the main drive for me once I realized like how you could instantly be part of something, and I think it's still something that to this day, it's like, with the advent and like ubiquity of social media and technology, it's like we spend more time behind our computers than ever in history. We spend more time staring at screens ever in history. And I know one of the problems now with COVID is we feel this sense of disconnection, right? Like we're not talking to one another face to face. We're all in front of computers and screens. And I don't know. It's a great part. It's a great part of guitar and music is feeling connected. And I know that's going to be something that we're going to be battling with collectively as a society for a while, is feeling connected to one another. So it's still part of the reason I do it, man. Like I'm an introvert at nature, but I can switch if I start talking about guitar or music. It's like, I don't know how you guys are personality wise. I've just met you here over the screen, but like I've met so many other people who are like that, like awkward, introvert, like not very socially graceful. But then you start talking about Metallica or freaking Devin Townsend or metal or jazz or whatever, and all of a sudden it's like we're social butterflies. So there's that part that I still love just as much as I did back in 1995.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly there, just about being an introvert at heart. And just, I mean, I always say it in the sense that I actually just hate people, just like, man, right? I struggle to just be, um, just, I mean, there's always politeness, but then, they're just being nice for the sake of it. But I'm just thinking like, you know what, yeah, if you want to talk about music, let's talk. That's what it is. But, yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard to like keep up the energy when it's stuff that you're not really as interested in, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
but
I've had that stance too with people. Like I used to consider myself very much not a people person. Now I think that's sort of switched around. But back when I was like a teenager in my 20s and maybe even early 30s, I was not. I kind of had that, the people equal shit mentality. Like I just I didn't find I had a whole lot in common with people. But the thing is I found that the thing I loved about music was that when you start talking about music and art, is that nobody wants to argue about politics anymore. You know, it's not talking about politics or like, or what kind of car do you drive, or superficial things that, you know, could polarize you one way or another. You're talking about things that you love, you know, and you start seeing the good in everything when you can have that bond with someone, when you can have that connection with somebody. So it's the reason why I love it so much. And I say this all the time. It's like, if I wasn't doing what I was doing in Periphery, if I lost the ability to play guitar, if I got my hands and legs chopped off or something, I would find some way to basically be a part of this world in some capacity, whether it's doing what you guys do, whether it's being a journalist, whether it's, you know, whatever. Like, dude, I'll clean toilets at a venue, you know, like as long as I'm part of the world in some capacity, it's like, that's what I live and breathe, you know?
No, I think I've had like a similar thought as well. I mean, as negative as it sounds, there's like a positive tone to it as well. You know, like, if I couldn't do this, is there a way I can still contribute to it or be a part of it? And definitely, 100%, there's so many ways you can be part of it. I mean, the other thing you mentioned about, you know, like, even when you were younger, about you know, just being into games and just being like a social introvert, and sort of, I suppose it made things harder when you're growing up. I suppose on the plus side with that as well is, nowadays, I mean, it's a more trendy thing to be into games, and you know, like, with
Yeah.
a lot of streaming platforms. I've got so many like younger cousins and nephews that just like, they just love all the like latest Fortnite streamers. I just can't keep up with it.
Yeah. It's awesome. Like, dude, back when I was like in high school, you would get bullied. You get made fun of for
Oh
playing
yeah,
too
yeah.
many video games. Now you don't get made fun of. Now it's just like people in their 40s and 50s play video games,
You
and
are the
like,
cool kid, like.
yeah, you are the cool
Yeah,
kid. If you play
yeah,
more video games than everybody else, that means you are the coolest kid in school.
definitely.
I love that.
I guess.
Uh,
Go on. Sorry.
no, no, go for it, go for it.
I was going to say, I completely agree, and how times have changed since then. It's like, you know, back when I was at secondary school, I remember I was into sports and I was into all my subjects, but music, I had to kind of hide it from people, and yeah, and it felt like that's what I really wanted to gravitate towards, but there was nobody else. So when I finally left and went to music university with Ameer, because we're both guitarists ourselves, it kind of feels like it's gone from, you don't know anybody in the music industry, to now you've got 1,000 people around you that have got the same drive and passion for you. It's just, it's
Yeah.
that feeling.
Yeah. I always say like there was a similar turning point for me too. So like, when I was in high school, I was not a cool kid at all. Like you know, like, awkward, got bullied. But when I went to college, like when I went to university, that was when I started to like really meet people who I locked in with, like in terms of taste and connection. And that's when I started to feel like, okay, I think I know which world I want to be a part of. So like, for people out there listening or watching, like, I don't know how old you are, obviously, but people who are petrified of, you know, growing into that next phase of becoming college students and working adults, it gets a lot easier when you start to be more secure and comfortable in your tastes, you know, like, and like you said, like you were saying, you hid your tastes for so long. I mean, like, I think even like years ago, heavy metal was not something that you would have been proud to say that you liked, you know what I mean? Like wearing black all the time and having long hair or whatever. Like, you know, girls would think it was weird, just like, oh, this guy's a weirdo, he listens to death metal or whatever. But like, it's one of those things, like, the older you get, the more secure you get in that, and the more connections you have with people, the more you're willing to own it and say, this is who I am. And that's happiness for me, you know, like being able to just own all that stuff. That's true tranquility in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess, you know, finally feeling part of something is one of the best feelings in the world.
Yeah.
So I guess, you know, in this period, that's kind of completely took a downturn. You know, no gigs. It's been hard as a musician.
Yeah.
We talked to one of our recent guests about collective burnout, and I know for me and Ameer, you know, at the start of this whole period, we saw it as a way to like really get down and graft on our instruments and get as good as possible. But it didn't really turn out like that. You know, there was suddenly no inspiration and no motivation. Did you feel anything like that yourself?
It's funny. I think there are two sides to it. Like, I've definitely felt more motivated since coronavirus hit to get better at recording myself, is to find ways to inspire myself in ways that I couldn't rely on previously. Because normally, like, you tour, you play shows, and you put out records, and it's sort of this cycle where inspiration kind of happens naturally. I always say, like, I don't like to write on tour. I don't like to write music on tour, but the experience of touring, the experience of getting out on the road with Periphery, kind of makes you itch to go back in the studio. You know, it kind of fulfills itself, this creative and touring cycle. With this, it's a little weird because I can see how artists would be like, you know, they would say to themselves, I don't know if I want to write a record because I can't play it for anybody. I can't go out and play a show. What's going to happen to the music industry? What's going to happen to the touring industry? I mean, there's a lot of people saying that the touring business may not come back till 2022, which I don't think is outlandish to think at all. But at the end of the day, I look at creativity as kind of like a muscle that you have to work out. You know, like if you sit there and you don't do it, it's going to be tougher to get back around to it. And for me, I find that I have to do it regularly, and I have to keep it a practice similar to working out or similar to, you know, meditation. Keep it something that like is part of your life on a daily basis, even if you're not feeling inspired. I found it's a good practice for me personally to sit and just try and force yourself to write sometimes. And if something good comes out, cool. Most of the time it doesn't for me. Like I feel like maybe only 10-15% of the time I'll write something that I'm like legitimately proud of. But it's because I do it so much, I make it such a regular practice that I'm able to, you know, put out music. And, you know, as a band, as Periphery, we're able to do that. But I would say you really only hear 10 to 15% of what we write collectively in Periphery because we write so damn much. So I can see two sides of it for sure, but for us, we try and keep it a practice that doesn't rely on the success of the touring industry, that doesn't rely on the state of the music industry. We kind of look at it as like, all right, we're in a bubble. We are going to write no matter what. Even if, you know, coronavirus gets worse, if nuclear bombs start dropping, if there's radioactive fallout, I'm going to go find a shelter and I'm going to write. We're going to continue to do what we do regardless of the state of things. And if things pick back up and we can play shows again and we can come back to England, we can come back to all these places that we love playing, then we'll be back soon. But yeah, we're going to be doing our thing regardless. That's the way I kind of like to look at it. It's like just keep the practice regularly.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to look at it. I guess it's effective as well. I mean, as a band that's so like I'd say technically high level. Obviously, everyone knows that. Do you still find things that really challenge you? Like I know when everyone's young and they first pick up their guitar, they find the first Metallica record and they hear the first Slash solo and Eddie Van Halen, and everyone that's like never attainable. And when it is attainable, you find something else. But as someone that's such a high level, you know, what are you looking at these days to still challenge you?
Ooh, you don't have to look far, man. Like, because every time you feel, I don't know if you guys are like this or any of the listeners are out there like this, but every time I make a big stride or I reach a new level in my playing, so to speak, it's my nature to find something that I'm not and then to be bummed out about it. You know, it's like if I write a song that I'm really proud of, or if I write a part or I practice some technique that I'm like, oh man, I got it down, awesome. You know, like I'll be on Spotify and then Animals Leaders will come on and I'll be like, fuck. You know, or I'll hear like Dream Theater, or I'll hear like the new John Petrucci solo thing that he did, and I'll just be like, God damn it.
I think it's the woes of social media. It's just like
That too.
Yeah.
That too. It was funny. It's funny. Like I was surfing around on social media this was like months ago, maybe. I found this band as a guitar player. His name's Manuel. He's from the band Unprocessed. I discovered him and I was like, oh wow, okay, this kid, like, he looks young. He looks like a baby compared to me. Like he's probably been playing guitar less than me, but this dude is just a wizard. And that kind of stuff happens. It's like you're just surfing around and you find somebody who you've never heard of that flips your world upside down. And I will say that it's a double-edged sword, that kind of thing. It's like, it's cool to be inspired, but I'm guilty of this sometimes too. is being so sort of floored by someone's playing where you're like a little demoralized, you know? And for me, there's always a little bit of a grace period where I have to take that demoralization, take that feeling, and turn it into something productive and positive. Because I can't sit there and be like, oh, well, fuck me, you know, like I'm never going to do this. I'm trying to make it a practice. I'm still trying to train it into my brain to let that be a positive force, to let that be like, okay, this person's doing something fucking awesome. And I want to not emulate that, but I want to put that much work into what I do too. And I think that's a beautiful thing about this. That's why I love sports so much too, man. I can go on and on and on about
No,
this.
keep going, keep going.
It's one of the reasons I love sports, and I am a big sports junkie. Like I love basketball, American football, baseball. I haven't got into like European football, like soccer or anything like that, but I want to eventually someday. But and hockey too. It's like I recognized very early on in my life, like the type of dedication and just like this tunnel vision, kind of no fucks given attitude about what an athlete does. This like, it's unconditional dedication and motivation to accomplish something very specific, and that 99% of people out there do not give a shit about, but you do. And I found that to just be this like this wildly inspiring thing. And maybe it's the reason that I love video games so much too, you know. That's why I love, you know, I love in an RPG being able to like level up my character, even though nobody else on the planet gives a shit about my character. It's like it's mine, you know. It's like it's my possession. It's my tunnel vision perspective on this, and I'm not going to let anything else get in the way. And it's part of the reason that like I identify so much with athletes. And I just got done watching the it's like the Michael Jordan Last Dance documentary.
All right, yeah.
on Netflix, and it's just really inspiring, man, how somebody can have that kind of focus and dedication when literally everything else is pulling in the other direction, you know. So I find that really inspiring.
No, I think it's an overarching trait, I guess across like, you know, sports and video games and music, even just have like that competitive nature. It's a mindset thing more than it is like you can only be done in that field or it can only be done in the other field. I mean, video games are something I'd like to touch on in a moment, but I guess from a musical point, like, so with Periphery, you weren't there at the very start of Periphery, were you? I think you joined after the first album.
Yeah, shortly after the first album came out.
Yeah. So then, and then you since then we've seen Periphery 2, 3, Alpha, Omega, and just last year Periphery 4, right?
Yeah, a couple EPs sprinkled in there too. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah. So I mean, like, how have you found just like, you know, just writing between the various albums, like, you know, just changing things up? So you've already mentioned that you guys are constantly writing, which is always really cool because it kind of gives that reassurance that the best content is always out there on the records, right? Like, so is it safe to say that Periphery 5's already been written?
Yeah. First of all, I don't even know if it's going to be Periphery 5. We've had some talks about going in a different direction. Like, cool. I don't want to give away any you know, insider secrets here, but yeah, as far as the next release, we've written a lot. And since we're always writing independently, there's never a shortage of potential ideas that are waiting to be sort of, I guess, sculpted is what I would say, into Periphery songs. And I say it that way because the real writing is not done independently. I would call what we do independently as sort of like drafting. Like we're drafting ideas that we can bring to the Periphery table, and the Periphery writing process, in my mind, truly begins when we're all in one room, you know. And that's been how the process has evolved. You asked how, you know, our writing has evolved over the years, and I would say the main difference has been like, you know, you listen for instance to Periphery 2, you know, back in what, 2011 we did that one, or 2012. That record was a bunch of ideas that were written, you know, Alone by Misha, or Alone by Jake, or Alone by me. And then we would sort of call them Periphery songs with the least amount of collaboration possible. Is why we did that. I don't really know, other than that's how we were comfortable writing at the time. And we were still kind of figuring out how to collaborate healthily. And over the years, we became closer. We trusted each other more. And we started to just become more comfortable with the idea of relinquishing control in favor of trust to somebody else. And, you know, I think that's popular in any workplace, or not popular. I think that's, it's necessary in any workplace to be able to surrender that control. And that's where we are now. And that's why I think the music, and this is just my opinion, I think the music has improved over the years because we are not stepping all over each other. You know, is that we all get into a room and we submit things democratically as a band, not stepping all over each other. So so that's been the main difference as far as how we evolved over our careers. Yeah.
I guess that sort of, I mean, we about a week or two ago, we just had Adam Neely on, and we had a somewhat similar discussion, but it was about pop music and how like the sort of the manufactured pop sort of approach is, you know, you chuck a bunch of songwriters in a room, out comes a product. But I mean, here it sounds like you take the opposite approach, where you used to take the opposite approach where, you know, each individual person would sort of flesh out the songs. I mean, was it always also the concern that I use this saying, and I used it with Adam as well, about too many cooks spoil the broth, as in, like, you know, if you have too many people on it, it's just going to completely spoil the purpose of the song almost.
The thing is, I've heard that exact, you know, sentiment from other people in different bands, and they say, oh my God, I could never do that. Like I could never get into a room and then just like have every voice in a room completely equal, because it would be, like you said, too many cooks in the kitchen and nothing would ever get done. And I think that's fair. I think that for certain lineups and for certain people and personnel in a band, that approach could work or fail miserably. And it really just depends. Like, take for instance someone like Opeth, like Michael Aukerfeld from Opeth, or Devin Townsend, for instance. Like someone like Devin or Michael, like they have such a specific vision that you don't necessarily want anybody in the same room as them, because they've got everything planned 20 steps ahead. The reason I got into this, and I think I can speak safely for the rest of my bandmates, the reason they got into this is because they want to be in a band. That's the environment that I adore. I've always wanted to be part of a collective unit, so something that didn't give a spotlight to one or two people, but where everything was equal. And we have that mentality as a business as well. So everyone in the band makes the same exact amount of money from the band. We all split it 5 ways. Maybe that's a little bit more info than you wanted, but that's how we run it from a business perspective. And that translates very deliberately to the way we do things in the band as well. It all is sort of tied to this idea of all of us being equal in that sense. So when it comes to writing music, it's the exact same. And that's just the aesthetic and the type of nature that we want in the band. And yeah, if it were different, if we had even one person that didn't agree or feel the same, then it would be a pretty big problem. But I guess it just depends on the type of personnel, depends on the product. If we were writing pop music, it would be way different. You know, you would probably just want 1 or 2 voices in the band, max. But for us, all of us have always wanted a band, and we got that, you know, a fully democratic, equal band, and you can hear that in the music. I hope, you know.
I mean, it's great to hear that it's more like a band now than just a business venture. Do you know what I mean? It's always great to be in a project with people that you can call family instead of people that you don't really want to work with. So it's great that you have that. I guess when you're, you know, planning a new album and you've got so much material, how do you go about selecting which songs actually make the album? Because I'd imagine it's, you know, is it storytelling? Is it Is
Ooh,
it got to be sonically cohesive, or is it just with which riff sounds the heaviest? You know what I mean?
this could be a 7-hour podcast if you want. This could be a doozy. But it's a good question because I still don't really even know the answer to that. And all it is just time, experience, trust, and patience, and just open-mindedness. And this goes back to what we were talking about before with the athlete comparison. It's like when you see a great athlete out there on the court or on the field, all you see is these amazing plays, this sportsmanship, this like insane athleticism. You don't see them showing up to the gym at 4:30 in the morning. You don't see the relentless dieting and dedication to physical fitness. You don't see them breaking down from being exhausted. You don't see the amount of strain it puts on their family. Um, and the list goes on and on and on. With Periphery, you get to hear the songs, you get to hear the album, but what you don't see is the arguing, the resentment over people not liking a riff or a song or an idea. You don't see the arguing. You don't see the growing pains. And maybe I guess I've talked about this before, but during Juggernaut Alpha and Omega, back in I think it was 2014, 2013, we had some conversations back then. We were like, man, like, are we not going to work as a band? Like, are we going to break up? Because we were just having some really tough conversations about certain parts making it, certain songs making the record, and then feelings would get hurt. And we had to learn how to take those feelings, and instead of letting them grow into resentment or this sort of silent dysfunction, was to turn that into a talk, a productive dialogue. It's like, if you have, I compare it to a relationship, a partner or a wife or a husband or whatever. It's like, it's the same principles. It's like, instead of letting things sit silently, awkwardly, it's best to bring those things to the table and discuss them. And that's one thing that we had to go through a big crash course in was learning how to communicate and avoid dysfunction by being direct and learning how to communicate our feelings. Because this is it's like when you write a piece of music, you guys know this too, because you're both musicians. It's like, it feels like you've just, like, it's part of you, and to have someone say that they don't like that, it never feels good. And I guess part of our learning process in our careers was learning how to navigate those waters and not be personally hurt. And again, this is where trust comes in. Because if you trust the person that you're speaking to, you're not going to say, oh, well, fuck you. If you trust them and respect them, you'll be like, you know what? I trust you, and that you have the best intentions for this band possible. So I'm going to listen to you. Let's surrender my personal feelings for a second and just hear what you guys have to say about it. So trust me, it's not natural or organic for me, or for anybody in the band for that matter, but we've learned that is the best way to get to where we want to go. And that is having a completely resentment-free, open environment in our band. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure, but it's just time. To answer your question, it's just time and being open-minded, and yeah, it's a long process. Trust me. That's why Periphery 4 took so long to record, is because we had so much material. We had so many ideas that we felt were strong enough to make the final record, but ultimately it had to pass every single one of our checks and balances to make the final record, which is why Haunted Shores is so fun, because it's not that. Haunted Shores is just like, oh, this is ridiculous. This is absurd. It's going to be on the record, It's fun.
Well, I think that's it. Like, especially when you were saying about, trusting your bandmates and your friends, just to realize that they've got the best intentions in mind when they're giving you that level of feedback, and they're being honest with you about it. Because like it's something I've, like, even when I've written songs for people, or when I've written my own songs and sent it to people, and they're like, I've like, it takes a while for it to sink in, that you got to realize that they're not just being malicious for it for the sake of it. They really want you to actually improve as a musician in doing so. which is if it makes it even more sentimental, I guess. It's just like, you know what, like, that's pretty sweet of you to say that, like, and not just say, oh, it's a good song and just mute it.
Yeah, I know. It feels great too. Like the more you reflect on it, like sentimentally, as you're saying, it's like as you're laying down at night, you think back on it, and you're like, that was a adult moment. That was a mature, non-reactive moment. That term is something that like I've been learning. Sometimes I go to therapy, like
Right.
through all this coronavirus stuff. It's like I do these Zoom sessions with my therapist, and I find it to be really helpful. And I know there's a lot of taboo out there about people going to therapy. They necessarily assume that you're crazy or that you got issues and whatever. The truth is we all could benefit
We all
from a
do.
little.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all could, man. Like we all got our own shit going on.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've learned is pretty much beneficial across the board in all of your relationships in life is to not be reactive. You know, is to not jump out there with the immediate first feeling that comes to your mind. Is to, especially when it comes to conflict or any sort of disagreement, is to take that initial step back and just discipline yourself to be that way. It's challenging though, man. It is tough because the first instinct is always just want to be, you know what? Fuck you. You're being malicious. You're being an asshole. You know?
No, exactly that. I mean, this is the thing, right? So that's all part of like just developing yourself musically and as a person. Like, so I believe with Periphery 4, it was like a self-released album, which I'm sort of gathering that it's like you start leaning towards a more like pure sound of what what Periphery should have been, or what you want Periphery to be the whole time. And you mentioned, I mean, we'll call it, with quotation marks, Periphery 5, whatever might come forward, it's going to be, it might be in a different direction. So I'm guessing now it's going to be like, it's only going to get more fun, right? Because you're doing exactly what you want to be doing.
Yeah, that's always been the goal, man. And not that our previous record labels ever controlled us, but I do have to say, Periphery as a band has this fetish for autonomy. Like we have this obsession with control, because we don't want Periphery to be this timed machine that you can just count on a record every year or every other year and have it have a certain sound. It's like, I love AC/DC, but I don't want to be AC/DC. Like I don't want to be this band that you can kind of just like, what you're going to get. And I think that's beautiful for certain bands. I think that works amazingly for different artists and bands. But for us, I don't know, man. Like I just, it makes me happy to think that, like, oh, you know what? Let's start writing a really quirky, weird double concept album. Let's end a record with Jake saying "suck my balls" at the very end. Like let's wear a bunch of Misha masks on stage. Let's, like, again, it's this obsession with just like, let's keep Periphery a passion project, as opposed to this well-oiled machine that we need to keep feeding to put food on our table. And that's why we have so many other business ventures on the side, is because we want to keep Periphery fun. We want to keep it this wild thing that is unpredictable, and basically you don't really know what you're going to get the next time you hear from us. So yeah, that's something that we've always been obsessed with, and that goes with 3 Dot, our record label. It's our record labels before, they weren't doing a bad job with us. But again, it's just having our own record label is the next sort of stepping stone in us having complete and utter control over everything that we do. And I think you're going to get nothing but that from Periphery in the years coming forward. And not because we have our own record label, but because of who we are as people. It's like Periphery is always going to be a passion project.
Yeah,
I can promise you that.
I mean, I guess that's really good for fans as well, because it's more like it's less of a we love this band. It's more like, you can feel closer to the band, relate to the band. It feels so much more intimate knowing that you've got all these, like you mentioned, wearing Misha masks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
As fans of the band, it's different to what you get really with a lot of artists these days. And so, when writing music, do you ever feel pressure to get that kind of stuff in for the fans, or is it always just right for yourself, and if people enjoy it?
we're selfish pricks in that way.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like when everything else comes into play, such as touring, such as social media, interviews, I mean, we even game with our fans too. It's like that stuff's an open door. It's a revolving door. We're as transparent and as open as I think anybody with any public following. That's who we are. I think it's part of who we want to be going forward pretty much forever. You know, it's like we have nothing to hide about who we are as people and who we are as musicians. We love sharing that side. And in that way, like we feel like people who come to our shows are family to us. But when it comes to us writing and us putting out music, that's a totally selfish endeavor. That's just, you know, like, I hope people like this, but really deep down, I kind of don't care, because this is fun. And to us, it makes us smile and it makes us thankful to be doing what we're doing. So yeah, it's a weird dichotomy in that way.
I think it works better like that though, because, you know, if in both ways, if you're writing music specifically for the fans, then, you know, you're gonna find yourself doing things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
To please an audience, to please a wider audience, to please a mainstream audience, to please a gent audience, metal, whatever. But, you know, if you're writing solely for yourself, it's nothing but passion and love. So people are going to resonate with that no matter what.
Yeah, and people like to attack bands like Bring Me the Horizon. People love to attack bands like that. And they're like, wow, they're just trying to satisfy all these people. They're just trying to make, you know, soccer moms happy and be on the radio. But I hear that music and I hear the opposite. Like I hear a band that wants to really streamline their sound and do something wildly different, something that could fail. And how many bands have tried to write more commercial music and fail and fall flat on their face? The list goes on and on and on. But they did it right, and they've gotten more popular, rightfully so, and they deserve every bit of it. And again, yeah, I think it always comes back to what you're saying. It's just like, you got to make yourself happy first and foremost, because this is not fan service. You know, we're not writing the next Star Wars movie. You know, this is not, you know, Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
We are doing our own thing here, and we're supremely grateful to those along for the ride. You know,
I think that's a big thing as well. Like, you know, the way I've sort of been, the way I've heard it, I guess, is, you know, when you're doing something you love every day, you're never gonna have to work a day in your life. In that sense, you know, it shouldn't really feel like work. When you get to that stage, which is, I mean, it's amazing to hear. I guess with the sort of songs you write and everything, I guess with music in general, you know, you always associate different genres to different moods. Periphery music, it depends on which record you listen to, but it can be quite like polarizing in terms of the way it can make you feel or the journey it takes you on. Like, what sort of mood or what type of people do you think Periphery is like best suited for in that sense?
it's funny. You know, I've met a lot of our fans who are engineers, scientists, or dorks, you know, or nerds. But that's kind of like that's who I am too. You know, like I was just talking about video games and how, you know, how sort of helplessly addicted I become to like stat-based games, like role-playing games and stuff. And I know a lot of fans of ours who have really analytical brains. And when I meet people like that who have a lot to say about our music, I can tell that they've been studying it. And I can tell that they don't just listen to a song and digest it one time. You have to go back over and over and over again to hear certain things, to digest certain things, and to internalize them. And that always makes me the happiest, because I remember being like that when I first heard Dream Theater, or when I first heard Meshuggah, or when I first heard, I mean, hell, even Metallica back in the 90s. It's like, I've been there. And that's the kind of person that, like, I hear them talk about it. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, you and me, we're right here at the same level, you know? Yeah, that makes me happy. I like to think that you could be a more casual fan, but I have to say, like, selfishly, that makes me the happiest. Yeah.
Periphery is kind of, I've always seen it as, you know, there's a lot of, obviously there's always going to be casual fans, but it's definitely music for musicians, I've always thought.
Yeah. I will say that, like, it's been cool though, having like going to shows and meeting people who just discovered us, or who don't know how to play guitar, or who don't know how to play drums or do anything, and they like the music. That's always like, oh wow, weird. Why do you like us again? Like, can you just tell me in your own words, like why?
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, like you're saying, it's like you just expect everybody to be guitar dorks, or drumming nerds or whatever. Yeah.
And it's really interesting. So sorry, mate, go on.
Yeah, so there's so many different like subsets and everything, subgenres of metal, prog, metal, gent, however you want to class it. Like, what would you say it sort of comes down to in terms of like Periphery have their own sound, right? There's no like it's not necessarily like, oh, Periphery is just another rip off of this, or someone's a rip off of Periphery or anything like that. Like, what do you reckon like is something? Is it like a conscious decision you guys keep in mind just to keep it, original?
No, no, never. First of all, I would say a lot of people just call us Meshuggah ripoffs, and that's fine. I get that. That's funny to me, because in some sense, like you can hear our influences, and I think that that's something that you really have to try to not fight, because then again, if you do try and avoid or really struggle against showing your influences, you're going through this awkward phase of trying to color your output. You're trying to like forcibly manipulate your art in order to avoid a reputation, and that to me is goes counter against the very point of what you're doing, right? Because music or painting or drawing or whatever is supposed to be an expression, a 100% pure, transparent depiction of what you feel or what you want to say. And if what you want to say kind of sounds like Devin Townsend, or kind of sounds like Opeth sometimes, or kind of sounds like Meshuggah sometimes, fine, whatever. You can compare us to whoever you want to compare us to. I think that never really bothers me, to be honest, because like when somebody's like, oh, you know what, Icarus Lives sounds like Meshuggah. Okay, I like Meshuggah a lot. Thank you, I guess. But it's something that we never think about, I guess, is my short answer to that. Is like, it goes back to the whole passion project thing. It's like, as long as it's fun, as long as it makes us happy, and as long as it sounds good, then we're going to go with it, and if it sounds original, cool. If it doesn't to some people, fine. But it's a conversation that we don't really have ever. Like, does this sound original? Nah, that never enters our brain. It has to sound good, and that is usually achieved without ever really talking about it. Like in a room, if something sounds good, we know it. Like we can all sort of like, communicate that without having to use words like originality or progressive or whatever, like any list of adjectives. No, it never needs to satisfy any of that, as long as it makes us all happy collectively.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to any Periphery record, it takes you on a huge roller coaster of emotions, listening from track one to the last track. But something that always sticks out to me is there always seems to be this huge cinematic like influence.
Yeah.
On tracks like Loon, for example. That's one that sticks out with me because it's one of my favorites. But that kind of track must come from somewhere else. It doesn't remind me of Metallica. It doesn't remind me of Meshuggah. It really seems so. Everything's unique, but it's almost film score. Or where does that kind of tune come from?
Those kinds of songs, and that is one of my favorite songs too. Maybe that's like maybe top 3 favorite Periphery songs in my mind. But you're just chasing an energy, you're chasing a mood. And I remember for that song, me and Jake wrote the chord progression that happens in the first 2.5 minutes by accident. We were just jamming on practice amps in Misha's living room, and we were like, cool, what if we close the record with a song that didn't sound like any of the other ones, that was just kind of like this more subdued, laid back song. And then once we started to involve the rest of the guys, like Misha wrote that epic, that Don't Let Go part, the build up. He wrote that heavy instrumental piece, and then Spencer added this epic vocal line over it, you know, the do you feel the love part. And it was an accident. Like it was meant to be this really subdued, laid back thing. And all of a sudden it became like this climactic moment on the record. And it's, you know, I play that song live still, and I get goosebumps, you know, still. Cause I think of the message of the song, but I also think of the collaborative nature of it. You know, it's like, that's the beauty of collaboration. That's the beauty of trust, is being able to accomplish something that you on your own couldn't do. You on your own couldn't have envisioned. It's relying on the others, what makes, you know, some of these moments special. So yeah, it's just an accident, man. And from that came one of my favorite songs ever. I would say maybe my favorite Periphery song ever is Reptile. And Reptile is another accident. It's like, that was meant to be, seriously, like in my mind, it was going to be like a 3-minute album opener in like that drop G tuning. It was just a total, like a dick stomper of a song, you know, just like a punch in the face to start a record. But then we were writing it, and like Jake and Misha, they were like, all right, this song still has a lot to say. Let's go. Let's keep going. And then we hit the end of the first section of that song, I think like 4 or 5 minutes in. And then Misha was like, we should keep going. And then Jake wrote that next section, the spoken word section that Mikey Goodman talks over. And then we kept going and going and going. And all of a sudden we're at minute 9. And then we write that electronic interlude. And then, you know, it's just, it keeps going. And again, it's the beauty of collaborating, because on my own, I would have wanted that to be a shorter statement, but putting trust in the others and then putting trust in me, and that being shared all around, it just turned into this, like, you know, what's a 15, 16-minute song that in my mind flies by like this, you know. I'm extremely proud of that song. And it's always the same, man. It's that level of collaboration to me that is so special, you know.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, like, the moral of that is that if it comes naturally, then stick with it. Keep going.
With it.
Yeah.
Don't question it. Yeah, don't question it so much. I think that's a problem as well for analytical brains, like I assume you guys are, and like I am. It's like, over questioning is something that can be quite impulsive. You know, like you question, like, fuck, does it sound too much like that? Or should we down tune this part? Like, if something makes you happy in that instant and something satisfies, just like, ooh, like that's always a cool like expression when we have that in studio. So someone's like, damn, okay, like the eyebrows go up in the room. Let's not question it. Let's just chase it. It's this really delicate balance of chasing a thread while questioning without over questioning, without being so analytical that you're trapping yourself. You know, it's a fine dance that is very hard for me to put into words. And it's kind of why I sound like a nervous 6th grader right now trying to describe this, but it's really delicate balance.
I guess that's one of the main things that I always notice about the band, though, because there is so much content in the music itself that could be analysed, or, you know, all the different meter changes, all the odd harmony, but what I notice with other bands and other artists, that sometimes that can seem and sound almost forced, but it never has done whilst listening to your music. You know, all of the odd stuff that goes into the tunes, it always just feels like it sits right in there and there's no questioning it. Do you know what I mean?
Thank you. That means a lot, because one of our cardinal sort of principles in the studio when it comes to songwriting is it has to flow. Yeah. Flow. I don't know if you guys know what I mean by that, but we don't like jarring changes. It's why we don't like these crazy BPM shifts in music. And there's some bands who pull it off. Opeth, Between the Buried and Me. Like there's lots of bands who write these long, epic songs that pull off the crazy fast BPM changes or tempo shifts or feel changes really quickly. We shy away from that because we are almost too sensitive to flow. The idea of parts needing to flow seamlessly into the other, not really shaking you or jarring you in any given moment. Sometimes we do it as sort of a novelty or as an effect, but for us, we hold that idea of flow, you know, it's almost as sacred in the band, and that means a great deal to hear you say that, because that's really important to us. Things have to flow, whether it's a 3-minute song or whether it's a 16-minute long song. I know it sounds ridiculous to hear me talk about flow when you're talking about a 16-minute song, but again, it's just it has to. you know.
No, I think that's cool. I mean, like, and from aside from like Periphery and everything you've got going on there, you've also got you mentioned it just before, Haunted Shores, which I'm if I uh, assume right, you were part of Haunted Shores before you were part of Periphery,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I guess that's more of a passion project then for you in that sense, or does that where does that sit?
Yeah, I mean that's almost just an outlet for material that's too fast and ugly for Periphery. I mean, I would say more than that. Like it's just something where there's no boundaries and no. I mean, I guess in essence, it's a collaborative project between Misha and I.
Yeah,
But there's no five-person democracy. There's not nearly as much planning and thought that goes into it. It's a very spontaneous, wild process that whatever we want gets to happen, you know. And that's the beauty of side projects. The beauty of side projects is that it's the wild, wild west. You know, anything goes. If you want to have blast beats at 270, sure, why not? Let's just do it. It doesn't matter if and no human being can play that. Sure, let's go ahead and do that.
sounds like the perfect musical playground.
I would say that's exactly what it is. On one level, Periphery is a musical playground, but if you want to take it a step further, Haunted Shores gets to eliminate what few boundaries there are in Periphery and just have it be this crazy, just death black metal free for all. And I wish I could show you some of the stuff I'm working on for Haunted Shores right now. I'm actually in the middle. After this is over, I'm going to keep writing this song, and so it's like 250 BPM. It's just blasting and you know, double kicks all throughout, and it's just trum pick. It's nuts. It's stupid. It's absurd, but that's what it's for. You know, it's meant to satisfy this like what if question. You know, what if you could write this like 5 minute long, just negative. It just sounds like someone puking up black stuff. You know, like that's this feeling that I'm going for. That's what I want.
No, that sounds very illustrative, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
No, it's cool though. I mean, something I've been wanting to talk about since like we mentioned it very early on, your voice acting career. So you've done, I suppose the highest profile gig you've got at the moment is with Disco Elysium,
yeah.
which I mean, I only just found out right the other day, and I was just watching reviews and just really getting my head around what kind of game it was, and it's like it's actually it looks really cool. Like it's
It's
something
an
that I want
awesome
to.
game.
I was reading you got to like sink quite a few hours into it. Otherwise, I would have tried to play it before we had you on because I wanted to talk to you more about it because it just looks so interesting. Just the whole aesthetic, the whole plot of it, and everything.
Don't rush through it. Yeah, I'm glad you didn't do that. For anybody who wants to play it, Disco Elysium is the name of the game, and it's on Steam for Mac and PC, and for more platforms that are being announced soon. But yeah, it's a police procedural role playing game. You know, it's one of the most diverse, sort of free, liberating role playing games that I've ever heard of in my life. And I play the characters Tommy and Manana in the game, and yeah, that was a weird gig for me to hear about at first because man, it was super fluky. Like we toured with the band Sick in 2016, and Mikey, their singer on that tour, he was big into voice acting at the time. He still is. He eventually became a casting director for Disco Elysium, and he reached out to me one day and he said, "Hey man, like you have somewhat of a deep, like a baritone kind of voice." And in my mind, I was like, "Sure, man. Like I guess. Like I don't know. To me, I kind of sound like a sloth. You know, I don't really sound interesting at all." But yeah, sure. What's up? And he was like, "Well, can you do an audition for me?" I was like, "Dude, I don't never done this before ever." So I sent him my audition for I think it was Tommy the Truck Driver, and I sent him that, and he was like, "Cool. Do you want to audition for more parts?" And so I auditioned for another like a Latin American character, and like my wife's Spanish, so I've learned Spanish over the years, and I know what the Spanish accent sounds like when someone's trying to speak English. And I got that one down. I submitted that audition. I got that role, and I went to England and recorded the voices for those characters in London for the game. And before its release, it was not really highly touted or advertised. It's done by a small studio based in Estonia called Zaum Studios, and very low budget, small team. And when it came out, there wasn't a ton of press about it, but it started to get all these awards. I'm not sure if you guys saw, but like it won a bunch of video game awards last year. Time Magazine called it one of the most 10 important video games of this past decade, which is nuts. And it just got all this acclaim that I don't even think the makers of the game were expecting. And then I finally played it 3 or 4 months ago, and I was hooked, man. Like, I was like, okay, this is one of the best RPGs I've ever played in my life. And it was surreal to hear my voice in it, because it's one of those games I would have played even if I wasn't in it,
Yeah.
Because I love RPGs so much. And yeah, I managed to turn that gig into some other work that I've been doing lately that I really wish I could talk about, but I've signed some non-disclosure agreements.
Enough,
I would get sued if I did, so I don't want to get sued.
No, I mean, I saw you tease some on your, I think it was on your Instagram, you teased something about doing more voice acting gigs. But, I mean, it's cool that it's really opened that door for you as well. Like, you've just found a whole other route of stuff you can do. I mean, maybe and you also didn't think you would find a gig because it just sounded like it was almost just chance and fate that it happened. I mean, from an RPG point, so what sort of stuff have you grown up on, and what are you sort of playing now?
Ooh, so I grew up on Final Fantasy, and my favorite games of all time, I mean, I would say are Fallout 1 and 2. If you guys ever played the first 2 Fallout, so the isometric, top-down view, not first person, not the shoot 'em up first person Fallout 3 and 4 New Vegas or anything, but for PC. And those games were heavily stat-based, had some of the most clever writing ever in video games. I would really encourage you guys to go play them. They're probably free now, man. Like, you probably get them at GOG for $5 at the very most. But those are my favorite games of all time. I love RPGs. Obviously, I grew up on the Final Fantasy stuff, a lot of the Japanese role-playing games. And yeah, I've been a steady gamer all throughout my life, man. Right now, I'm playing Last of Us 2, which I absolutely love. Yeah, I love it.
That's sweet.
Yeah, just whatever's out there, man. My wife and I have been playing Animal Crossing on Switch, and I'm really into that. Yeah, it's kind of a cool, fun, innocent way to blow off steam at the end of the day,
I think the only one that comes to mind, you mentioned Japanese RPGs, but a co-op that you said you and your wife play. I don't know if you've ever played the Tales series.
Oh, Tales of Vesperia? No, I never did, but a lot of my friends over the years have said you got to play the Tales games. I haven't actually.
Tales Symphonia is 80 hours of playtime, and I think when I was 8 or 10, I completed it 4 or 5 times over. So it just goes to show how much of a life I had. But
oh, dude, me and Misha were both playing Fire Emblem, Three Houses.
Oh, mate, Fire Emblem. Which one? Oh, Three Houses. Is that a new one?
The most recent one. It came out for Switch.
I've only the last time I played Fire Emblem was probably on the DS or on the Game Boy Advance, but
okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a Switch?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, get Fire Emblem Three Houses because you will do 3 playthroughs.
Sweet. No, that's perfect. Fire Emblem. This is back when I was a lot less mature. When you get so attached to the characters, and for those that don't know, in Fire Emblem, when the character dies, they die. You never get back. So
yeah.
I was so immature. I would just as soon as I'd lose my favorite character, I'd just restart the game. I'd just close it and just do it again. I'm like, right, no, I've got to get through this level without letting him die.
Well, they turned off the permadeath option in this one. You can toggle it on or off. Okay. So yeah. Dude, I'm lame with that stuff. I don't want that happening. I would restart too. So no, thankfully in this, you don't have to go that route. It's considerably easier than the other Fire Emblem games. So you're not going to sit there losing your hair, with this game. But yeah, me and Misha were obsessed with that one. I think each of us did 3 playthroughs. And then I also got into Ni no Kuni.
Oh yeah, yeah. I never played that, but it looked very similar to how like the Tales games sort of play out, I guess, or Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah,
Play that.
yeah, yeah. Same kind of combat system as
Yeah,
Kingdom Hearts, like this like half tactical, half action RPG kind of
yeah.
battle system. But yeah, me and Spencer were playing that one for a while. There's always a couple of us playing these games at a time, and we just talk about them within the band. You know, it's yeah. We're at all times we're always playing some kind of dorky.
That's sweet because I don't meet a lot of people these days that are as into RPGs as maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, because it's mostly shooters and
Yeah,
football games or whatever, sort of sports games in general.
yeah.
Those are the sort of the top two genres, I guess. But I mean, that must be pretty sweet. Like I'm assuming now that you take your Switch on tour with you then, and
Oh,
you're always
it's
on
a
it.
must. Like it's more mandatory than my toothbrush. You know,
Yeah, yeah. You get a
I don't
toothbrush
really.
anyway. That's the thing. Save data's got to go with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I'd take Mario Kart over brushing my teeth any day. Yeah.
No, I don't judge, no judging on that one. That's perfect. No, I'm trying to. I can't think of any more to. I'd love to talk about video games all day, but I'm sure.
We toured with the Contortionist, and they would have. You guys know that band from the
I heard
U.S.?
of them.
Yeah, they would all. We shared a bus with them on our European tour years ago, and their bunks were all near each other in the bus, and at night they would always disappear. They would always go crawling to their bunks, and you always knew what they were doing because they would be yelling curse words at each other from the bunks, and they'd all be having their Switches in there with Mario Kart on,
Yeah.
playing against each other as the bus drove to the next city. So it's just, dude, tour is pretty pointless without a Nintendo Switch. That's
Yeah.
my
It must
endorsement
it
for
must have been
Nintendo.
the biggest game changer in the last 10 years.
Yeah,
The Switch coming out.
yeah,
It's,
yeah,
no, that's perfect. No, I think we can end it here if you're up for that. Yeah. But
yeah.
thanks for coming on, Mark. It's been some great insights, some lovely conversations. It's sweet to know you're a big Fire Emblem fan, big Tales fan, big Final Fantasy fan. Just all of that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I will be playing Disco Elysium. Maybe we just put like a one-off, like random review of Disco Elysium up next.
You should. I mean, seriously, dude. There's so many outcomes in that game.
Yeah,
Like, you know how like you play Mass Effect and there's like what
yeah.
7 or 8 or 10 or 20 different outcomes. There's seriously dozens of different endings for this game because of how many choices and crossroads there are. It's nuts, man. I've never seen anything like it. So give it a try. If you don't mind reading, that's the thing. There's a lot of
Oh,
text
I
in it.
love reading. Yeah, it's fun.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
perfect.
Cool. So let me know what you think.
No, that's perfect. Thanks for coming on, Mark. But yeah, if you guys like this episode, be sure to check out our other episodes. And yeah, thanks for. We'll catch you guys later.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks for having me, guys.